Is there any alternative methods that you believe educators and schools can use to support people being able to, effectively retain information outside of test taking?
Ask the students to teach.
You said what? Say it again.
Ask the students to teach. There's different ways. You just one time a day in class, a teacher can come in the room and ask the students to teach what they just learned. Because when you teach stuff, you tend to understand more about it. So they could just come in the classroom and ask the students to teach, and they could grade them based on the way they teach the subject.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Victor. I am the Program Director for Energy Converters, and you are tuned in to the Agentic Show. Today's guest hails all the way from Nigeria. She goes to Freedom High School in Oakley. She is a junior. She wants to study either civil engineering or architecture as a major when she goes to college. None other than Toun Aladesanmi. Did I say it right? Almost.
Yeah.
See, I got it right earlier and I messed this time.
Yeah.
How you doing today, Toun? How's everything?
I'm doing good.
How was your day?
It was good. It was wonderful.
What was the highlight of your day thus far?
In PE, we got to play volleyball, and I really enjoyed it because this is something that I've been playing for a while, and it's been a while since I played volleyball last, so I really enjoyed playing it again.
Okay. Did y'all win? Now that's the real question. Did you win today?
We won a few games, yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, you got to win. You can't be out there playing for fun and not winning. What do you like most about volleyball?
That I could spike the ball.
Oh, so you tall, you can jump then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spike the ball.
That's for you want to get up there and be like, Nice. Well, thank you again for being on the Agentic Show. I really appreciate you tuning in with us. We're going to have y'all are in for a treat. We have a really, really, really good topic to discuss today. And I think you all are going to learn something. You're going to come back informed and maybe even inspired. So Toun's topic that she wanted to explore was what?
Standardized testing versus real learning.
Something that we all, if you've been in school and you've been in America, you know all about those standardized testing, and you know all about circling C and maybe B sometimes. You know all about it. We know all about how they teach you how to take those tests. So it's something that affects all of us who are in school, who have been in school. So there's a real good conversation to have. I wanted to start off just by simply asking you, what made you interested in exploring the impacts of standardized testing versus real learning?
Yeah, so the specific research topic under standardized testing versus real learning that I chose to go into is does grade equal proficiency? And this was because I would be getting A's in classes, but then in around 10th grade, I used to apply for a lot of programs that would require me to take this test to see at my level. And I would not perform at the height that shows my grade. I would be getting A's, passing classes, but on this test that I take, it didn't really show what I was getting in school. And that's what made me start researching into the fact that grades doesn't always equal proficiency. And just because also a person passes in a standardized test doesn't necessarily mean they understood that topic or they really learned something from that day.
So if I'm getting this correct, what you're saying is that when you were taking these tests, you were passing them or you wasn't passing them?
In school, I was
in school. You're passing in school. Okay, so
yeah, I was getting A's, but outside when I want to apply for programs, and I was required to take a background entry level test to see my level. I wasn't doing as good as I hoped I would be based on my grades at school.
And what do you think? Why do you think that was?
Uh, in my opinion, for me, I feel like the reasons because whenever they teach something in school, we just go with the mind of just learning, just like keeping it like cramming, for example, just cramming it, keeping it in our minds for test, and after that, we tend to forget. And I feel like for me, that's probably a big reason. Or we don't really understand the topic, but we just we don't ask questions because we don't really want to, upset like anything. It could be for different people. I feel like it's different reasons but for me personally, I just feel like it's because sometimes we just want to get the test done with,
Mhm.
and yeah.
So you brought up this idea of like you were taking these tests, or sometimes you don't understand the topics in school. So why do you think that is? Because if you're saying like when you're in school, you're getting like high performing grades, but then when you take those tests, you're not necessarily doing well on those tests. Why do you think that is?
Uh, I think a lot of times, like, especially in my family, like, we're really encouraged to be our best. So whenever I go into school with the mind, like during the test, I just go with the mind of I have to do my best in all this. And so I really just cram the day before. I don't really spend time understanding it, and then I just like forget all about it. So whenever I take this tests that are outside schools, I then realize, oh, I didn't really know this. I just kept it in my mind for
Just
this
to take the
test.
test.
Yeah.
Mm. So what you're saying is that when you're taking tests or when you're in school, you're just learning enough so that you can remember
For
what
the
the
test.
information is for the test, but you're not able to necessarily retain the information, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Hmm. So what are your thoughts on how teachers are teaching? Do you think are they teaching for you to just be able to to retain the information, or are teachers teaching in a way just for you to be able to pass the test?
In my experience, because
Or
there's different types of teachers. Some teachers really do teach because they want the students to learn, but a lot of times a lot of teachers I've had, they just taught just for the sake of teaching, just so they could get done with it, not really because they want the students to learn anything, just so the students could just so they could get done with it and the students should just do the test. Because I've had a lot of teachers just say it with their mouths that they're only doing this just for the sake of teaching, that they don't really like teaching, they're just doing it. And I've also had a lot of teachers who like tell students the answers and not challenge them. And I feel like that's also part of the reasons because they just want to get done with it. Just doing it
mm.
for teaching's sake, not because they actually care.
So are you saying that like in some classes, some of the teachers they just they just give you the answer, but not tell you how they got to the answer so that you could learn how to do it for yourself?
Yeah, they just want you to just do the exam and I guess pass, which is not a bad thing to want a student to pass, but their way of going around it is not. It's not helping the student learn.
Mm. I do have a follow up to that. So do you think like standard tests like accurately measure like a student's intelligence? Because you're saying on one hand, right, you're taking these tests, you just learn how to pass like tests, but you're not necessarily like retaining information. Do you feel like standardized tests, the tests that we have to measure, does it measure intelligence effectively? Like, is it what measures? If that makes sense, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's why I've been doing a lot more research because when thinking about it, because it's kind of like it's conflicting because technically the tests I take outside of school sometimes do kind of standardized tests.
Hmm.
So, and so those ones and the ones I take in school, I pass the ones in school, but I don't pass the one outside school, which is why sometimes it's confusing. But
Mm.
I think I think standardized test is a way to measure like someone's level, but I don't think that's all there is to it. Like just
Hmm.
because a person passes a standardized test doesn't mean they fully understand the subject.
You don't think so? You don't think by passing the test that means that they were able to like to understand the subject?
Yeah, not all the time. Some people just pass.
You so you're saying that some people are just good at taking tests?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
I'm just saying like basically that just because a person passes a standardized test on a subject doesn't mean they actually understood the subject.
that just mean that they were good at taking the test, is what
We're
you're
just
saying? So would you say that test taking is a skill?
uh yes, I would because in a test, there's like you could figure out the answers to some questions without being like with little to no knowledge by things like process of elimination, know what is not, even though you don't know what the answer is. You just know this is not the answer. So
Mhm.
that is a skill. I feel like test taking is a skill.
So you think it is a skill?
Yeah.
So do you think that so again, let me go back to that. Do you think that it's an accurate way of measuring a student's intelligence then? Because if you're saying that it's a skill, like just taking the test is a skill, so you can know how to take a test, but not necessarily know the information. So is that
I would say like it's been working for schools and they think it's effective, but I don't think it's fully accurate.
okay? So if you don't think it's fully accurate, then I guess my other question would be: is there any alternative methods that you believe educators in schools can use to support like people being able to like effectively retain information outside of like test taking?
Ask the students to teach.
You said what? Say it again.
Students to teach. Like, yeah, just there's different ways. Like you just one time a day in class, a teacher can come in the room and ask the students to teach what they just learned. So they know that because when you teach stuff, you tend to understand more about it. So they
Mm,
you could just come in the classroom and ask the students to teach, and they could grade them based on the way they teach the subject.
mm.
And that's about
Okay.
it.
So if I'm hearing this right, you're saying like give students the agency, right? Giving them
Yeah,
agency so that they can have the opportunity to learn. Like once you learn the information, if you know the information, then you can teach it. So giving students that agency to go up to the classroom and actually teach the information, so it gives them the opportunity to have, it gives them the opportunity to show what they know actually.
yeah.
And if you can teach it, then that means you can retain the
Right.
information and understand it. That's a good thing. That is actually a really good method, giving students the opportunity to teach. What would you do? What would you want to teach if you was in school? If you got the opportunity
Uh,
to teach in school with your
Math.
peers and you teach math?
Yeah.
What kind of math would you want to teach? Would you feel comfortable getting up there and talking to your students about or your peers about?
Algebra 2 exponents and radicals. I
Okay.
I feel pretty confident.
You feel pretty confident?
Yeah.
You smiling. You really feel like that's your thing, huh?
I really love math.
You really love math?
Yeah.
What got you into math? Why did you start liking math? Or how did that come about? How did you discover that you liked math?
Uh, I love doing math, like solving equations. It's just fun to like get an equation, find the answer, and like get the answer. I don't know. It's weird, but like I actually enjoy like writing a bunch of like numbers and solving them and finding
Hmm.
the answer.
Nice. Okay, so one of our last questions I want to ask you. So if you could, you kind of started talking about it earlier too, but here's another question I want to frame it. So if you could design an education system, what role would you think standardized tests would play in it? or what standardized tests play any role in the education system that you built? Like if you were starting from scratch.
Uh, I would, if I was building an education system, I would not take away standardized testing. However, it's not going to be the only form of testing that's going to be there. And
Mm.
it's probably not going to be the most important one. It's just going to be, just to clarify, because test taking is also a skill. So learning them, how to take standardized testing would be good too.
So what would you focus on? What would you lean on more?
Make them teach it. And also practical for subjects that are practical like math. Math can be very practical. Let them make a project on. They could like they could make their own project that has to do with the subject. Like if they're doing statistics, they could research about something and just tie it to the topic that
Mm.
you're learning.
So what about that student who may not be good at like test taking, right? But they're like really creative. Like what do you do for those students, the students who may not, who don't have the skills, who may not ever get the skills when it comes to like testing? Like how do they matriculate and still become successful if they live in a world where, testing is kind of the standard for how you matriculate and elevate in the world?
Uh, in my education system or in the world?
I guess both. One in your education system
Both.
and two just in general, like how it is
Um,
today.
in my education system, since standardized testing is not really the biggest thing, I feel like they would still be able to succeed,
Hmm.
especially with their creativity.
Hmm.
However, in this world, there's a lot of changes now to the system. There's a lot more projects than standardized testing. That,
Hmm.
so I feel like they would still survive too. I feel like a lot of teachers in schools and institutions are using less of standardized testings and more of creative ways for a student to express that they actually understood the subject. So I think they would survive.
Gotcha. Well, Toun, when you start your own school and you start your own education system, sign me up. I want to be a part of it. All right.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm gonna get up there
For a
and I'm gonna teach
student.
and I'm gonna get an A. I'm gonna be a student. I'm gonna get up there and teach my part and I'm gonna get an A. I'm gonna pass because I'm gonna teach
Yep.
really well.
A plus plus.
So is there anything else you would like to share with the folks out there in regards to standardized testing versus like real world learning? And I don't know if we even touched on the real world learning as much as we probably should have. That's probably what we should have. We'll make sure that we do that for this next one to focus a lot more on the real world learning.
I just want to say standardized testings are not all like just because a person doesn't necessarily do well on a standardized testing or does well on a standardized testing doesn't really it doesn't fully determine their potential in that subject. So
Hmm.
they shouldn't be discouraged or too encouraged by that.
And you killed that last one. And that's how we're going to end it. Again, y'all, I'm Victor. That is Toun, and you have tuned in to the Agentic Show. Thank y'all so much for tuning
Thank
in, and
you.
we will see y'all next time.
Thank you.